Hello, Cyclocross friends. You know, I need to stop there for a second because ever since I've been doing the heat check videos and that really sort of amped up voice, and I say hello, Cyclocross friends, completely different there. I can't remember how I said it originally. I mean, I kind of know, but I try to go back to that and it doesn't work anymore. It's now like this, hello, Cyclocross friends. And that's not the podcast voice. That's the video voice. And, too much going on, Cyclocross friends. But we're here with another episode of Cyclocross Radio. It is episode 156. It is another episode with Zach Schuster from CX Magazine and also Micheal Boedigheimer from Yeah You Ride. And these I think we're going to hear a lot more from these guys because I think this is a good dynamic. We have a great conversation, stay on point, and really get a lot of information out there. I'm going to warn you ahead of time. Well, you've already seen it. This is a long episode, but we don't really ramble or get off topic much. Zach is very good at keeping everything in line. So we start with Jingle Cross C1, get into the World Cups, and really just go through a lot of issues that hopefully you guys are interested in. Also some pretty detailed race recaps and really a good post-mortem on 2 weekends of high-level, world-class cyclocross racing in the United States, which was awesome to be a part of. We are sponsored today by Works Hydro Shot. Ride, shred, rinse, repeat. That's what they do. And I can tell you this. I'm going to go off the script a little bit just to say this, that we had conditions in Waterloo, Wisconsin, that were made for the Works Hydro Shot. It was torrential downpours followed by mud. There was mud everywhere. And it was great for cleaning the bikes, but I can tell you this, I didn't have a bike there. But I was covering this event. I was covered in mud. My shoes were completely caked in mud, and then I had to go into the press room afterwards. And they don't like people tracking mud all through their Trek's headquarters. So I used it. I had somebody else just spray down my waterproof pants, spray down my shoes, and just clean all of the mud off there. And the Works Hydro Shot was pretty much a lifesaver in that event, and it worked perfect. I also hear that it worked great on the bikes too. This is something that you all should have. It should be part of your own little personal service course. And Works is offering listeners 15% off of all hydro shots and accessories. They put together a bike cleaning kit for you to check out. You can get your Works Hydro Shot at yourcleanbike.com, and you enter the promo code CLEANBIKE to get 15% off any hydro shot item. And let me just back up there in case I didn't mention what it actually was. It's a portable power cleaner that uses the Works 20-volt power share batteries and pulls from any fresh water source. So if you just got there's an adapter for just like a 2-liter bottle. You can fill it up with water and get just that much cleaning done. And it's pretty awesome. So once again, yourcleanbike.com, enter the promo code CLEANBIKE, and you'll get 15% off of any hydro shot item. These guys have been a great sponsor. They sent us a lot of free units to give away, and really been fun partnering with them. So take advantage of that and support the companies that support the Wide Angle Podium Network, which you should also support. Go check it out. Everybody was up there. We're all having different stories from the Madison, from the Waterloo World Cup. Gravel Lot has this great series right now with Adam Meyerson. Go check that out. And then later on, I'm sure they'll have more up-to-date stuff on the World Cup. Bike Shop CX is up and rolling. They had live stuff from the event. I'm sure that the Slow Ride guys also are talking it up. Molly Herford from the Consummate Athlete, she was out in Waterloo too. It was great to have everyone there. It was great to meet a lot of people who are listeners. It's always good to put faces to names, and hopefully you all were able to do the same with the podcast personalities that we had there. So check everything we got going on at wideanglepodium.com. In a couple weeks, we're going to start our next donor drive, so we really want you to be a part of that. We have a very small percentage of people who actually contribute to the network, and we want to guilt you all into doing that. So that's going to be part of it too. Okay, but right now, let's talk about, we're going to start with Jingle and then get right into what happened at Trek. We got Zach, we got Micheal, we got a lot to get to, and we're going to do that right now. Okay, We are here once again with Zach Schuster of Cyclocross Magazine and Micheal Boedigheimer of Yeah You Ride. Nailed it. I've been practicing all day.
Nailed it. Thanks, Bill.
We last spoke in the basement of the Jingle Cross Media Center. Well, on mic, I guess we should say we last spoke. And now we're all finally back home. In New Orleans. I guess Zach's still in Madison, and I'm in DC. But we wanted to kind of pick up where we left off last episode, which was before the C1 race happened in Jingle Cross. I mean, it'd be easy just to sort of push that one under the rug because it seems like years ago at this point. But Zach and Micheal, what we talked about already, half jokingly, half serious, that's 33% of the C1 races we're going to have. We're 2/3 of the way through the C1 season in the U.S., so it's kind of important to talk about. And also, I think we just needed to do a quick follow-up on what we had said last week, and we got some feedback from the race director from Jingle Cross, John Meehan, who listened to last week's episode and really just wanted to clarify some of the things we were talking about. He agreed with everything we said, but I think he just wanted to sort of shed some more light on what he was facing as far as the optics of the event, the decreased crowds, and just even racer numbers, and a lot of it had to do with he didn't want that weekend. That was the Iowa State game, which is, even though it's a out of conference game for the Big Ten, it's an enormous game, and it's an enormous day in Iowa, and really it's something that people mark on their calendars, and that's gonna take precedence over anything else in Iowa City and the surrounding community. So even from finding the volunteers that he needed for the event was much harder this year, to people coming out, just sort of casual fans coming out and enjoying the event, knowing that it's a good time, knowing that there's a party on Mount Crumpet and all of that those numbers may have been affected by that. And then just he wanted to clarify too that was not the choice of dates, and the problem was that Jingle and Trek both wanted the date that Trek eventually got. So they were sort of both angling for that same date. And I think from Trek's perspective, they have other events going on. They have Schwamagon and other things in the weeks before and after. So they were sort of needed to be on that date too. So it just was one of those unfortunate things that there were conflicts all around. Jingle Cross was like, oh, that's fine, we'll do it, we'll take this date. And I think the last thing that he really wanted us to know, and also everybody listening, is that they intend to do everything they can to be a World Cup next year. I mean, that's kind of the word on the street. Oh, is Jingle Cross going to be a World Cup, especially after what we saw the turnout was, and you hear about teams from Belgium that may not come back. Like I think the Powell's team said that they're not coming back to the U.S. And is this kind of the death knell for U.S. World Cups? And I think that is a bigger picture that we're going to be talking about a lot. But at least for right now, he's like, we're doing everything we can. We're not like throwing in the towel, and we're going to have a World Cup. So that being said, anything you guys want to elaborate on that point as starting out, or get into the racing? Zach.
Sure. Well, I decided to see, to what extent participation was affected, because, that's something that I heard from people was like, hey, fields are really small. It seems like fields are small. I felt like there was still the same energy that was there. I mean, people were going crazy, like hanging out at the barriers and up in Mount Crumpet. Like there was a lot of the, cheering and good energy that's always been there for Jingle Cross. And I think like participation wise, if you just look at like number of people who did at least one race over the weekend, they're kind of back to the numbers that they would get back when it was in November or December. So it makes me kind of wonder if there was kind of a World Cup bump For example, roughly speaking, there were about 670 people in early December 2015, and then there were 1,100 who did it the first year of the World Cup. And last year was 845, this year was 730. So, participation in terms of number of people who showed up was down a little bit, and that might be a little bit higher. I don't think Colin from Cross Results had the World Cup race in there for whatever reason. So, 740 participants or whatever. Still pretty good, and they've also added a shit ton more categories. So I think that's part of why people are seeing that they're in smaller categories is there's just much more subdivisions. It used to just be like Cat 2, Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5, and now you have a lot more choices. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's maybe that we're seeing some, the World Cup magic or bump fade out, and we're getting back to kind of that new plateau or that new normal that we've talked about that we think we're seeing in U.S. Cross.
Yeah, I think also there was he was talking about how like in the past they tried doing the Gran Fondo. They don't do that anymore because everybody really just wanted to do the gravel race, and that was a huge success. And I think that's going to be something where you're going to see a lot of the people coming that aren't reflected in the cyclocross numbers are probably going to be over there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder, what you see a lot of races doing that, adding in these extra elements to bring people. But I mean, I'm curious if there's any figures about people who actually stick around and participate. Because there's one thing is the numbers of racers who show up, and the other thing that we spoke about was the amount of spectators. And so it's like if the numbers are sort of reaching are not too bad, and they're back when the number of racers are back when in November, it's like, okay, well, we have the people coming to participate, but we're losing the spectators. And I'm just curious if adding these other elements actually help that number, or is it just they do the gravel race and then they leave. And also, you got to add in the numbers the doggy cross, right? Like that's got to be a bump in attendance with that alone.
Well, I mean, John deserves a ton of credit. Bill, we've talked about it with Epic Rides, and is doing the same thing over and over, working. And Epic Rides has created this new model. Like, he worked his butt off to create all these new fun things to get people at the event. There was the doggy cross, the gravel grinder, the fun run. I mean, you can't fault. They did everything that an event should do. Like, it was a festival and an event, and there was an awesome atmosphere in that little festival area, and I don't know, there was a great vibe there. And I think that's what every race should be doing, is thinking new ways to get other people who aren't per se cyclocross racers to come to their event.
Yeah, there's another aspect to it that I just thinking about this as we're having this discussion. First off, I think that one thing that he could add is that he should license Bodie's Omnium for the whole event, and include like the gravel race, the doggy cross.
Doggy cross is Doggy cross is trademarked.
Well, no, just but have that all as part of the Omnium.
Right. Yeah,
gotcha.
Well,
okay.
You have Omniums in road races, but there's not enough cyclocross Omniums, right?
Right.
I mean, and I like your idea, Bill, of bringing in the gravel race. I mean, can you go do the gravel race and then line up in the elites? And that's got to be worth, a bunch of points.
Oh, yeah. No, I think the coefficient factor in there is going to be huge. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean, I heard rumor that there was some cross racers racing on gravel bikes this past weekend. So it's like,
I think successfully too.
Right? So some of those riders are ready to go already.
Yeah.
Well, hey, now we've got an episode of Grodeo coming up at some point, so that may be a topic for Grodeo.
That's me trying to get onto the Grodeo show as well.
Okay, I see what you're doing here.
We have the podcast Omnium as well. I think the other. So here's the interesting thing that I'm thinking about just sitting here, and I think that may even be a bit of a conflict between what Zach you're saying and Bodie you're saying, in that we want people to come out and be spectators for the World Cup race and also the UCI races. And then the organizers need people to show up with their bikes, pay a registration fee, and actually race, because that's how they recoup a lot of their costs, and which is fine. But at some point, I don't race. I don't show up with a bike. It's really easy for me to travel. I get on an airplane, I go, I check my bags, I get them at the end, and I'm done, and it's much easier. And I'm sort of like, people should just do that. Just show up and spectate. These are great events. Just go and enjoy the event. And I think what stops a lot of people is almost the daunting extra added thing of coming from another place in the country, not being a professional racer, and trying to move all of that gear and then race. Whereas I don't think we get just the casual, I'm a cyclocross fan, this is awesome, let me go to this event. And I don't know if that means, and I know this is not going to be popular, but what if you started charging admission? And then sort of building up that part of the event. I mean, part of it is, I think, and you find this when you do live events, if you actually put a price on it, you may increase your attendance, because then you increase the perceived value of the event. If you say this is a $30 ticket and we're only selling so many tickets to go to this World Cup, people may plan for that and do it, as opposed to just, I can show up if I want to, and if I don't want to, there's really no loss because I don't have anything invested in it.
Are you?
I'm saying let's make it into an actual real sport. Like.
Well, I there's this guy I know.
Yeah.
He runs a UCI cyclocross race. He's very tall, has a beard. His initials are BS.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. You guys should try it. Right? I think in a lot of cases we kind of sit around waiting for people to do stuff, and it could be like a proof of concept stuff. You've never been afraid to do that, Bill, with everything that you do. You could see what happens, and if it's a total dud, then I guess maybe that's not the model. But if there's some return on your investment or some success, it's like, hey,
the scary thing is, out of all of the UCI races, I think in the country, we are the one that could do it successfully, because we are in a secure federal location. There is one gate to get into it, and we control it. You can't, they were building all those fences at Trek. It's already done. The U.S. government already did that for us. But I don't know. That would be... No,
I think you're right. I mean, maybe to create to make cyclocross, like you said, to make it more of a, right? It's almost an economic thing. If there's a value on it and there's a limited quantity, to make it into more of a spectator sport. And
I mean, it's the type of thing that, so you say, even just starting out, if you say, okay, if you're racing, part of your race entry is you get to watch the UCI races. If you're not racing, I mean, even just like a $5, door charge.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not totally against that, and I've gone to plenty of races at a local level that are on parks, and you pay a $5 park fee, to use the area. I think one thing that's interesting though is like what are the people paying for, and I'm specifically thinking about the World Cup level. You're seeing these European riders, and so they have a bit more star power and draw. And I think we talked about last year is the Vanderpool effect, like him not being there, Wout not being there. And I felt, even for myself personally, and I felt that I saw this, is that Yolanda Neff being at Trek had like a really big effect, and just the amount of people who really gravitated towards her and wanted to see her race was pretty prevalent. I mean, obviously, Yolanda Neff is a personality, and she's an amazingly great rider, but she has a billable personality. And we have spoken a bit about some of the Belgians that, don't stand out as much as Wout or Vanderpool beyond sort of their skills, and how that is maybe harder to market. And I think that if you do charge, I think there is a way. You've got to figure out that way in which you charge for the star power, and if you are charging, then those sponsors need to work hard to get those bigger riders to come over. And just to kind of end it, to talk about the note that I guess the Bingle Ballways team, the Eli's team, they're saying they don't want to come over next year.
Yeah. You heard that too, yeah, Zach? Didn't that come out? I mean, that was like a Belgian news story that they were basically...
Yeah, but it was the latest of the Mad Libs. Well, not even Mad Libs, fill in the blank.
Right.
Blank team doesn't want to come back to US. Why are we doing this, But yes, I think they expressed express that. And it's weird because it's always the teams that are doing well. Like, right before it was Vanderpool's team with Vanderpool and Sonic Hot, and they were like winning races, and they're like, why are we doing this? It's really weird. I don't know. I'm always confused.
Now poor Tom Mason just is on his own.
I know.
Riding solo.
Him and Johnny, where they had a buddy comedy. I would have loved to seen like a 2-week buddy comedy between Tom Mason and Johnny Vermeer.
They're the perfect foils for each other too, because Mason is just like the most laid back, cool person out there too, and Johnny's Johnnying.
Hey, well, speaking of Jumpin' Johnny, do you guys want to go through some results? Friday at Jingle. Oh, no, sorry. Sunday C1 at Jingle.
Let's do it.
All right, well,
are you a results guy here? Does your computer work? Do you have your computer today? Are you a results guy, Bodie?
I have the results pulled up if you'd like me to read them off.
Yeah,
right,
sure.
So we speak about Johnny first, Vincent Bastain second, and Jim Arnouts third. In the women's race, we had Magalit Rochette, first, Katarina Nash in second, and Evie Richards in third. And let's shout out, we had the UCI Junior race. This is a new addition to your team, Bill, Andrew Strohmeyer.
Yep.
He won the race, Jared Scott in second, and Nick Carter in third.
Yeah, big, and big rivalry sort of brewing in that field seems to be Strohmeyer and Carter. They're really going back and forth early on in these races. They had a bit of an interloper in some of these races in Thibaut Nace, but it's been fun to watch those guys go at it. I will. Yeah, I think let's just sort of spend a little time here on the men's race. If you all saw the last heat check, I mean, the first thing is that we kind of had the incident with Johnny Vermeersch and Gate, I guess is what it had been pegged as, where he was coming through. What is that? What's that off? Is that off camber of the Holly Jolly Hellhole, or is that someplace different?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that is the Holly Jolly Hellhole.
That is the Holly Jolly Hellhole. Yes. Yeah.
I loved how I said
spot.
I wanted it to be the starring, attraction in my one of my race reports, and it was. I was so excited.
Well, it was starring because we had rain and Sunday was muddy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
we did.
It truly was the whole part of it, like right at the end of that off camber that this happened. And what happened was there was metal fencing. This metal fencing, you all have seen it, but it has like these flat feet, and the post goes into the foot, and then that secures it. And then a lot of time it's zip tied to the one next to it, so it really is secure and can't move. And especially when it's in the mud like that, those feet are just like dug into it. Well, what happened is a spectator most likely wanted to get to the other side of the track, and it was tough to get through, so they took the fencing out of the footing and just left it loose. And
didn't they cut the zip ties too?
And I believe there was a zip tie there. Yeah, that was also removed just to make that access easier, which, I mean, you're not thinking about it really, and it just sort of was like it should never happen. PSA, don't do that. I mean, these things are set up for a reason, and we saw why. Vermeersch comes through that section, it does absolutely nothing wrong. I mean, he grabs the fencing, he grabs the barrier to balance himself and to pull himself through. I mean, we see this all over. Kokside, it's basically just a conga line of people using the barriers to pull them through the sand. So this is kind of a known and practiced technique in cyclocross. The problem is that it wasn't connected to anything, and then he pulled it behind him, and it looked like he purposefully took out, Nicholas Kleppe behind him. To have planned that, he would have been an evil genius. To have known, to have seen that a lap before and goes, that's going to be my move. So, we were sort of making light of it, and reasonably so. It was a pretty outrageous thing to see. Johnny Vermeersch contacted the heat check and wanted to make sure that everyone knew that he did not do anything purposeful, and he did not realize that was going to happen, and he hopes that he is not seen in a bad light. And I just want to say to Johnny, we love him, that Vermeersching is not a pejorative.
Okay.
Well, I do have to say this. I've been working with Bill for 2+ years in the media room, and in the media room, we're all looking at our stuff, and there's a lot of like, oh, look at this. Oh, wow. I have never seen Bill react to anything like he did to seeing this video.
It was the first time you see it, you're like, it's just shocking.
Yes. Bill was excited, and it looked like he just grabbed the gate and threw it at him.
Yeah,
that's what it looked like at first view.
No,
it looked like, oh my gosh, I can't.
It looked like a professional wrestling move.
Yes, it did.
Another just thing, before we move on to the women, that I do want to point out, because it was something that we were joking about before we started recording, but I think that is really worth noting. And I'm gonna go here. Just another generic Belgian. Gage Heck was able to be the first one to break into the Belgian line of 5 in front of him, and this is kind of a theme that we're seeing in all of these races, that that it's like Belgians to the front, and then everybody else fight for the scraps, and I don't know. I don't know what to say about this.
He could be the token American interloper.
Yeah.
I mean, because foreshadowing Friday's race, we also had an American interloper in that one. But I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to me that there's been not necessarily there hasn't been consistency in which of the kind of, top American men are having those good days. Like Curtis had a great C2 at Rochester. Gage, stepped up, and he was kind of the one, that was kind of tail gunning that group. Steven was the one who did it at Friday at Trek. So I don't know. To me, it's kind of interesting that there hasn't necessarily been consistency, and that suggests for domestic racing for the remainder of the season, it could actually be fairly interesting on the men's side, because there has not been a top dog who has emerged, at least as the top Belgian interloper.
Yeah, and even like Warner was up there in the World Cup with as the highest finisher. So yeah, and then I think that I don't know, Steven Wilder's getting 10th, and not a good showing for the Dutch. The Dutch, are missing Van der Poel for sure. That they're just fighting for the scraps there in lower down. Van der Haar didn't do this race, but yeah, it's one of these things that we have all these Americans in here. If you look at because it's a C1, so it's like, and the only people who are really left were the Americans. So if you look at the standings, it is, what would you say, like 60%, 70% American riders in here on the men's side, and
a lot of stars and stripes.
Yeah, with a couple other thrown in there, but not near the top. So
I'm wondering, do the Belgians sort of flip a coin to see who starts the Sunday race? Or I mean, obviously we're some of these guys they're not always at the front of the World Cups, but it's not always the same people who are sitting out. I don't know. I just find it interesting.
I would say one thing: there are people who definitely had an objective when they came to the U.S., and I think that Vincent Bastians has to be going home saying this was a damn successful trip. He got second place in this race. You don't see him. I mean, he's not there in the World Cups. I mean, he kind of knows where he's at. It's what Zach. I mean, you got the story with seeing Steve Chanel, after the race, that he's like, these are the races I can win. So when he's in the C2s, and when he doesn't do it, it's like it's that missed opportunity. And I think Bastians was in that same spot and really took advantage of these races.
Yeah, I think it seems like it's a lot more of, the especially on the Telnet team, but also on the Paul Sausen team. It's kind of not their superstars, but it's a great chance for some of their other guys to get those C1 points. And they do have a limit. There are so many C1s in Belgium that probably a lot of their, top guys max out or get close to maxing out on points. And so it's a decision for them. But like, I know Gianni, when I talked to him, like he raced again because he was really pissed that he finished fourth. He was not happy with his World Cup result and that he missed out on the move and the podium. So I think he wanted a little bit of redemption, even if it was just a day later in the C1.
Here's a question for you, because I was just thinking about this now when we were talking about Tom Mason being alone at the race. When coming to the start of the C1 race, I passed him with his mud boots on in Jingle on the way to the pits. I'm just wondering, who was he supporting?
Johnny,
because of the
Yeah, but I don't know what he was doing. I have a picture of him just holding an umbrella and just hanging out.
Is that is that because Ramirez is on the road team? So they're still like are those teams? Are they both owned by the same? I think they're both owned by the same group. I'm gonna get letters.
Okay. Well, I thought that's why they had the buddy cop, because they're both on the same road team, and it's like,
But then Johnny pitted for Tom at the C2 in Trek on Friday.
Okay.
And he sat down in a lawn chair.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. I just didn't I didn't put it together of who he was working for, though. That's funny.
So I think that was the story.
So right. I'll have to ask Scott. Diedenbach is a camping chair also in his pit bag.
Okay, fair. That's a fair question.
Scott doesn't work at races anymore. He wouldn't know.
All right, let's go to the women's race, huh?
Yeah.
All right, I'll read off the top 3 women. Oh, I already said, so we don't need to read it off again. But another strong finish for Magali, wins the World Cup, and then lines up in the C1 and wins that one.
Yeah, the one notable thing here, and I think it follows into the World Cup. There was a little, it's still like women's, as great as the women's side is, it still gets a little forgotten. And there was just this hand wringing over what are we going to do about cyclocross? It's just Belgians at the front, and of course the first knowledgeable response was, have you taken a look at the women's standings? Because, I mean, it's amazing. You got a Canadian winning, Czech, kind of, in second place. Czech American. In second. British in third. French American.
Frenchie was in fourth.
Yeah, in fourth. And then, first American citizen, Katie Keogh in fifth. And then another Brit, and then just a slew of Americans. So maybe there's an American problem on the U.S. side. They're sort of dominating the top 10 there.
Yeah, they're in Belgium. They're trying to figure out that issue.
Well, I think for the longest time, we've talked about this in the past, is that they didn't care. They didn't care until they had to have women on the team, and then it still was like, it's still kind of this weird place where, Ellen Van Looy's playing Soigneur for the men's team, and not just as a cutesy joke, like she is working. Sonny Kant did the same thing when she was over here. She was working for the men's team. I just don't think that kind of equality is yet there, and I'm kind of like, I feel bad for the women racing in Belgium, but at the same time I'm like, that's fine with me if we can kick butt on the women's side. I'm all for it.
I just want to point out just the which is great in the women's field. We see this a lot, is the depth of age. In the top 10, you have, Katarina Nash at 42, and then Katie Klaus at 18. Maddie Monroe was in there in 12th at 17th, but just that's pretty awesome to see. And I think that is sort of going to lead into the World Cups, but just how diverse that is, that rate, and just how strong Katarina Nash is and ageless.
Oh. Yeah, and then even you have Maddie Monroe making Katie Klaus look old.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Well, I mean, speaking of the young riders, one rider who did have a very strong ride in that race was Anna Kay, the young British. She's racing age 20. But she was up in the lead group of 4 with, who was it? It was Katarina, it was Evie, it was Magali, and her. So, it was really cool to see her, just sending it, I guess, and getting up in that group. She eventually finished 6th, but that was really cool to see, that confidence level. And, it was a little bit of a Send It Sunday. Like, you've got nothing to lose. You get a chance to race with some of the greats in the sport. Might as well go for it.
I think
she kind of pulled it off.
Yeah, she actually said pretty much that, Zach, that she just did not have a good race on the World Cup, and she kind of was felt that she didn't deserve to be up in the front, or she was not a little fearful. And then on Sunday, she decided to say screw it and went hard, and was not afraid to blow up, which she did a little bit. She admitted, but yeah, it was a really strong ride, and that definitely stood out to me too.
Well, and of course, the highlight for me was that Micheal, she was a lot more patient. So on Sunday, she just went, full send in lap 2, and she was like, well, I guess I'm doing this. And she was much more patient and waited and made her winning attack in the Holly Jolly Hellhole. So that just made my weekend, I have to say, as a race report writer. But yeah, no, I mean, it was interesting to see her use a little bit of tactics, because she's talked in the past about how she's very impatient at times, and she kind of showed that in the World Cup a little bit, where she just kind of went for it when she got that gap in lap 2 and was like, hey, I guess I'm going to go for it, even though it's way too early. So maybe a little bit of maturity from her in terms of race winning tactics, and it was cool to see her win races in multiple ways. That weekend.
It's interesting too, because if you look at the top 3 of those riders you could put into that same category. I think Evie Richards also has talked about, I need to not just go full gas from the gun and then go as hard as I can, as long as I can, because that seems to have been her only racing tactic up until maybe this year when she's coming back from this injury. Caroline Mani, we know, same thing, fast starter and just wants to be out front and hold it as long as she can. And then you got Katarina, who's like, I'm just going to chill out here for a while. Maybe I'll drop back 5 seconds. Maybe I'll drop back 7 seconds. She has that confidence that she knows she can still get back up there and isn't really going to stress until it comes down to those last final laps.
Well, after she actually referred to, after her World Cup win, the young kids going out really fast. And she's like, I just want to be like top 8 while those young kids go do their thing. And, we'll get to it. But Evie Richards did that again in the World Cup in Waterloo. But yeah, no, Evie said, I asked her about, I ran into her at track, I think, between the two, maybe it was between Rochester and Jingle. And she's like, I was like, have you learned tactical racing? And she's like, I'll be honest, I've had to, because I'm not as strong as I was before after coming back from the leg injury. Yeah, but as we saw, she still looks pretty darn good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think that was going to be some of my notes for the World Cup, but I just want to do a self-plug and say that, speaking of tactics and Evie Richards, I put together a little video over on the Yeah You Ride Instagram of a press conference from last year's World Cup with Evie and Ellen, and I'm asking them if they race with tactics, and Evie's like, tactics? No, I don't use tactics. It was very much like what was the old 76ers basketball player? Practice?
Allen Iverson, practice?
Allen Iverson.
We talking about practice?
Oh man, can we do a mashup of those two? That would be amazing.
Oh, that would be pretty great.
Using that as like the caption to the video, but I was like, no one's gonna understand what I'm talking about.
Oh, you're in the right
room.
Bill
and I would. Yeah. Bill and I would.
I knew you guys would.
We've probably made an Allen Iverson reference on this podcast before,
for sure.
So you're in good company.
For sure.
All right. Well, I think we should move on over to Trek.
Yes.
Let's do that.
Yes.
I mean, it was only 3 hours away.
We had a nice drive over. Stopped in Dubuque.
Yeah.
Tried to get some coffee. The one coffee shop seemed to have closed down like 6 months before we got there, so that was sad.
Oh, Dubuque's a beautiful riverside. Dubuque's pretty.
Yeah.
Home of.
Actually, we went to the bike shop there, and then went to the Troll. No, that was in the wrong town. The one where the Duluth Trading Company or whatever the.
Did you go to Mount Horeb or
Mount
did you
Horeb,
go to
that's where we
Dodgeville?
went.
You went to Mount Horeb?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, did you go to the Grumpy Troll?
We did.
Yes! Oh my gosh, dude, you were doing all the best things.
Yeah.
That's an excellent. Yeah, because it's right next to
Zach's article.
No, I didn't even mention it.
Yeah, he's keeping it locals only.
Well, I kept it to east side of Madison, where people were likely staying. I didn't realize that there was a Grumpy Troll stop.
Yeah, no, we stopped there. That's what you get when you travel with Scott Kelly from Norco and sometimes borrowed by Cliff. He's down for all of the good stops. So
Yeah, Trail This Bike Shop, I believe, is right next door.
That's exactly where we went. Yeah, he went in there and rep the Norco brand to the owner because he carried him and was like, well, we got to go in here. So we chatted to him for a while, and then went to the Grumpy Troll. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I rode my bike to Mount Horeb last night, so that's awesome. Yeah,
I saw that on your Strava, Zach.
Oh, excellent. So Waterloo. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, I think. Should we start with the C2?
Yeah, C2, maybe? Especially since it was, practically a different venue than what we saw for the World Cup.
Yeah.
You guys lead off because I didn't actually make any notes for the C2, so I'm going to go familiarize myself with the results.
Yeah, well, I think, we started with the men for the other one. Let's start with the women for this race. And I think one of the, just starting out with why I said it looked like two different venues is that if you all were following the weekend, you know that on Sunday we had torrential rainstorms, just a mud fest in there. Completely different story on Friday. Really a beautiful day. A little warm, maybe a couple degrees warmer than you want, but nothing like we've had in the past in Madison, and a little different track where you didn't have the big run up, so really just a speed fest out there. And on the women's side, this was something that I don't know if on purpose or not, since she's a Trek athlete, but you talked about it, Bodie. This is the main draw. You had Yolanda Neff there, and I think we, as followers of the sport and people who cover it, were excited to have that new element here, and as spectators, I know they were, and it was cool to see her, and boy did she put on a show in this one. I mean, you saw the high cadence kind of doing its thing and just blazing trails out there. I think she Zach, did she was it from the gun, or was she in the pack for a little while?
No, she was in the pack until lap. I'm gonna say it was like lap 4 of 6 or something like that.
Okay, so she was hanging out for a while and then just went.
Well, no, she made her move by hopping the barriers. So the way that it was set up is that there was a little bit of a hill after the barriers, and so it was one of those situations where there was a huge advantage to hopping versus running on that course. I don't know that it mattered as much in the World Cup course, but it was definitely where the exit was uphill. If you stay on your bike, you're accelerating out of there. So she hopped. Mani was probably the most aggressive rider in that field, and she was kind of back in like 3rd or 4th position or in that group. So, Neff got a gap, and then she went for it, and it was 2 seconds became 5, became 10, like in a hurry.
Yeah, I was in the secret bar area for a lot of that, which is just these kind of dirt single tracks, but really well packed down. And talk about just a tale of two races, but where it was taking, where the people who were lined up in the secret bar on Sunday were able to cheer for these riders for like an entire minute. It was just this red and white streak with this blonde ponytail just flying through there, and like you didn't even see her. It was just so much speed just going through that section, and she honestly looked like she was just having a blast, just crushing that course.
Yeah, that's the case. I mean, and she said as much after the race that she was having fun. So one thing that, I find interesting about her, and I guess I'll just bring it up now, is, last year at Worlds, like she had a not very good grid position, and she had to work her way up. And it seems like she kind of, 5th or 6th was kind of like her peak, and she kind of slipped out and, wasn't a contender. And we saw again in the World Cup, like she was gridded 4th row. So I kind of wonder if jumping in this C2 was because she wasn't planning on racing it, from what everyone at Trek said. I wonder if, she's rethinking kind of her plan in terms of UCI points and stuff, because, if you want to win, if she wants to win in Switzerland, like starting in the 4th row is going to be like a really tall order, especially on what we expect to be like a really fast Worlds course. So I just kind of wonder if maybe she'll be jumping in more races. Although she did say afterwards,
until you said that, I didn't even put it together that this is kind of she has to commit to this whole season, right? Because it's home Worlds for her.
I heard someone say like home city,
really,
like something like that. So it seems like and that's what the folks from Trek were saying, is that she wants a better grid spot, because she's great and she's a star, but like starting fourth row is a really tall order to win a
especially a
UCI World Cup or Worlds.
Well, I mean, can't she race some C1? Are there C1s in the EKZ Cross Tour?
I believe so, yes.
Staying maybe, don't know the geography, but maybe staying closer and not having to get in the bigger races. Because what I seem to hear was from people, overhearing people at Trek, is that Yolanda is tired. Like, it's been a long mountain bike season,
right.
and Bill, you probably understand this, and so just the I guess she can shut it down for a bit, but then we'll have to start it up again.
It's a tall order for them as well, because it's not as bad as it was 2 years ago when you had this South African World Cup in March. I mean, so imagine that you're racing Worlds in February, and then you have no off season whatsoever, and you have to jump right into your first World Cup in March. And what the extra kind of little pickle that she's in now is that, yes, even if the first World Cup's like April or May, this coming year so she has this home city cyclocross World Cup, which still is not her main sport, and it leads into an Olympic year for the mountain bike, which is everything in that sport. I mean, 2020 is just, you go in these 4-year cycles, and 2021, everybody's just going to be chill. And then it just starts ramping up again. And this just is like for their funding, for everything else, this is the only thing that matters. So it really is interesting that she's kind of trying to play this in a way that she can be successful in cyclocross, and then turn it right around and have a successful year, including the Olympics and mountain bike. So that's going to be, I'll bet and then she has Bern coming up, which is another Swiss race. So it's like, is she going to do that World Cup? It'd be interesting. It'd be hard to think she's going to miss that, but I will bet you if she does that, and then she may shut it down for a while.
Yeah. I mean, she said a while when I asked her. I'm like, when are we going to see you again? And she seemed to imply. But, Voss and Brand and all of them make the December start work. So whatever they're doing, but part of that is probably getting start contracts, which probably shouldn't be very hard for her to get for some of those for some of those Belgium races. But I mean, I just look at coming into when we resurface in December, what Ferran Prevot has done. She's back.
Yeah.
The star power and just the thought of great battles potentially between those two and Cross is
especially since
please race more cross. Selfishly, it's they race all the cross you can.
They were doing it already during mountain bike, and they did it I mean, they crashed each other out and injured each other last year. So it's
oh yeah,
yeah.
But
what do you think?
Those are two.
Do we want to Bo? Do you want to go through some of those other? Do you have those results up for the women for the rest of the field?
Yeah, we had Yolanda Neff in first, Clara Honsinger strong second, Caroline Mani third. How far should I go? I want to go 5.
I think you got to do the wide angle podium.
Exactly.
Podium. I think.
Oh, that's right. We got to go. Lucia Gonzalez in fourth, Spanish rider, and Ellen Van Looy first, Belgian.
Yeah, nice. I like Belgian. Very good.
Yeah, Friday. I just wanted to go back. So what was cool about Trek is that on Thursday they had the pre-ride party, and we've sort of talked about the differences between Jingle and Trek, and just sort of Trek Cup and World Cup Waterloo has Trek behind them. Just doing that pre-ride party where they brought out the pizza and beer was a cool vibe, a cool thing to do. And coming back to star power, Yolanda Neff shows up right when the sun is setting, and I'm like, crap, I gotta grab my camera. I had put it away, and I was like, okay, this is the one spot on the course that's backlit. Let me just camp out here. And I was talking to Zach about him, and then the Yolanda Neff whizzes by. I'm like, oh shit, Zach, I missed her. And I sat there and waited for her to come back around so I could get that shot. But you could just feel the vibe then change. Neff is here, And Scott and Julie Herman they were announcing the practice, which was kind of hilarious. But they announced her coming into the building. It was a very rock star moment. And just it was a whole cool environment with the sun setting and the pizza and the beer and the announcers and Yolanda Neff, and it was just a really awesome vibe. So that's a cool thing to bring to your bike race, I think. I mean, that was a sort of a newer idea, or at least for me, and I appreciated that they did that.
Yeah, I think like the whole. I mean, if I would to contrast, I think the whole theme of the Trek CX Cup Waterloo weekend was definitely like that of a party. And we can certainly. Bill's already mentioned the secret bar, which has just taken on a life of its own. But yeah, I mean, right? Jingle is a festival, and Trek was a party, and so they helped foster that atmosphere. I was going to say I was disappointed because I know you got similar photos of me, and you chose to post the ones of Yolanda on your Instagram, and so I was just a little disappointed.
We still need.
But apologies for distracting you from the Sunday poof.
I will say that the Sandy poof, if you tag her in a photo, she will share it on her Instagram story, and then the photo, then she has 1 million followers, and so then your photo will get viewed. So, Zach, I just didn't think you had that click bait ability.
Gotcha.
One
interesting.
If you could send a resume with your socials on it, it'd be good.
So one interesting thing I learned, you talked about how the Friday course was kind of abbreviated, didn't have Trek Factory Hill, didn't have the Segafredo run-up. The reason for that is because the Trek Factory was open on Friday, and it was for OSHA rules, actually. They were not allowed to use those features for any of the races, including the elites.
That's amazing, because if somebody fell down the hill into the work area, then it would...
Yeah, so that was kind of interesting to me. But yes, it made it a much faster race. In the race, I think the big aggressor, and to me is still one of the big stories of the first 3 weeks of this season, or first month, is Caroline Mani. She just went out and was aggressive. She led the pace, she forced the pace, and kind of challenged other riders to follow her. And one thing that was interesting is, everyone knows her. She has the reputation or the nickname, the Animal. She's known for her, talk about like Dave Mabel did a faces gallery for us. If you want great faces, just go find Caroline Mani during a race. But I think it was Valdek actually from Cliff was telling her that he wasn't seeing enough faces out of her, and so he was wondering if she was riding as hard as she could, and so she made it a goal to just like ride. Yeah. So she made it a goal to ride as hard as she could, and she, really helped split that race up. It probably didn't help her in following Neff's move when it happened for sure, but it's cool to see her back. Like, she's a fun personality and an unpredictable racer in a lot of ways, and it's good to have her back on form. It looks like.
I mean, well chronicled. Just going through a rough year last year, and good to see that she's kind of stuck with it and come out. Gosh, yeah, just amazing shape. And on amazing form this year. Also, just want to give a quick shout out to the Hawaiian shirt cookie powered first Canadian Jen Jackson there in six. She's really been continues to be. She was a revelation last year, and just continues to just be a fun racer to watch, and someone who is just getting better week by week.
Yep. So I have a question. Why is this a C2? Why isn't it a C1? And do you think that not having those features in the Friday race, I don't want to say cheapens it, but I mean, do you think there's a way that they can bring those in?
I personally don't. I don't know. I kind of like that they're two completely different races. I mean, I'm okay with having just an all-out drag race, which this kind of was, and. I think it's not going to be course features that's going to determine if it's a C2 or C1. They meet all of the infrastructure requirements for a C1. They're a World Cup, so all the stuff that they need to be a C1 is in place, from ambulance on site to showers to all of the stuff that the UCI really cares about. What your course looks like, they don't care. As much. I mean, they're going to have their input on it, but they're not going to say it's not hard enough. It just comes down to, I think, the decision of Trek, and maybe there's some scheduling stuff in there. I don't know. But as far as, the stuff that's been hurting other C1s, meeting the international rider requirement, they got no problem. And meeting all those other requirements, they got no problems with that. I think they just have made the decision to make it a C2. can't imagine it's a money thing for what they're spending on the World Cup. But yeah.
Well, but they are also spending a lot of extra money, at least right now, on the equal pay part of it too.
Yeah,
so
that would have been that's another big bump.
It would be
Zach.
It would be a big bump to go to the C1 status and they certainly were eligible because Trek CXC Cup was a C1 before it became a World Cup,
right.
And so they have that history, like they earned C1 status. Which is it was always something we were proud of when we helped put it on.
That's great. Yeah. Moving over to the men's side, only two Belgians at the top. Lawrence Swick, who, after seeing Lawrence Swick in this race, he was kind of my pick for the World Cup. I thought he, maybe it was the mud and everything else, but he just looked so good in this race. Of course, it's not the full Belgian squad out there. Our new favorite Belgian, Nicolas Kleppa, in second place. Philippe Orts coming in third. Steve Chanel Steve in fourth. And then actually a name we haven't really mentioned in the U.S. day that much, Corne van Kessel in fifth place. And then maybe you can talk to this a little bit. Stephen Hyde coming in sixth place. And Zach, you talked to him, I know, but just having a ride that I think he was a little bit of relief there from what he was able to do in this one.
Well, it was. I mean, he was really frustrated by what happened in Jingle Cross. He had issues with his back, and it's been a full year now of him dealing with issues. And yeah, he said as much. He's like, this was so important for me to have this really good ride and come out here. And yeah, he was smashing. I mean, he was up there just behind the guys that were in third and fourth and got caught towards the end. But yeah, but it goes to say, right? Like, it's another one of our, top 3 or 4 Americans who had a standout ride, but it's never been the same one, and they've never had them together. It's been interesting to watch, who can put it together on a given day, and it was certainly his day. Another interesting, really the rides of the day go to Corne van Kessel and Thies Aerts. So there was the, Scott Herman was calling it the BMX tabletop feature or something similar to that, which we learned was Sheep Hill, right. Although the sheep was in the retail tent, and then there was one in the media room. There was one in the back of the media room,
and the original Sheep Hill was like that huge mound, like when the house still existed in the middle of the field.
Yeah,
that's where.
Yes.
So
there was a house on the course.
Yes. What was it? 3 years ago they knocked it down. It wasn't really on the course. It was back in that sort of that parking area.
Yes. But yeah, so they've always had the sheep there. Anyway, it's essentially like a tabletop feature that you might see in mountain biking. And so I think Thies Aerts might have tried to jump it or something. I don't know if either of you guys were there. And it didn't go so well. So he landed on the other side, fell to the ground. Corne van Kessel ran into him. Thies Aerts was like DFL. He had to ran to the pit. Fortunately, the pit was right there. But it definitely set both those guys back. And for both of them to go 5.7, was pretty impressive. Because we thought Thies Aerts was just going to drop out of the race. But, he just got another bike and worked his way up through the field.
I can tell you some of the folks who I was assigned to photograph in that race were in the 24-25 region. And they got some cool photos racing with Thies Aerts there for a while.
Oh, nice!
Until he kind of went through them like everybody was standing still and worked his way back up to the front somehow. But
yeah. So that was, I guess, something that you wouldn't pick up just looking at the results. But credit to them. And
one other thing I just did want to mention, I think the only in years past, and I know Hyde has done this, Powers used to do it. A couple other riders who were really looking to score well in the World Cup wouldn't race this race. And it seems like other than Curtis White, everybody else, I don't know, it seems like a different kind of mindset in there, that it's not, maybe they're kind of cutting their losses and just looking for more points, but nobody is just all in on the World Cup this weekend. Everybody except, I think Curtis was racing this one too, which was, I just found kind of interesting.
Does that ever worked out for anybody?
Maybe that's it too.
Yeah, I kind of think we've seen, Jay Powell is definitely the one we first really saw that with, but I don't know. I think a lot of bike racers, you get the legs opened up and, you kind of perform better after you put a little effort into it.
Did Vanderpool do the C2?
In 17, he did.
He did, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, who cares?
Well, it's Vanderpool, so.
Well, I mean, Tobin Ortenblad was up there with him and Tone Arts, in that race. I mean, I talked to Tobin a bit, and it was like, it's been an interesting juxtaposition looking at where he was, like, throwing down with Matthew Vanderpool 2 years ago at that venue. But yeah, I remember that. That was in the Hot as the Sun year.
Right. All right. Anything else notable about this C2?
So one thing notable was that Katie Keough pulled out of the women's race. And I guess we didn't hear, or I didn't hear anything on social media if there was some other issue or if she had just pulled out because not having a good day, might as well just pack it in. I have to pull up the results of the World Cup, but I don't know if that was just saving it. But anyway, it was just happened to me. Me and you, Bill, happened to be right there when it happened.
Yep.
It was an interesting moment, so just thought it was notable.
Yeah, it was even the thing where she wasn't sure, and her husband was there, and he kind of just sort of reached out and patted her on the back, and basically said, let's call this one a day, and then
pack
she
it
just
in, yeah.
left the track right at that course crossing. I guess we should probably just quickly mention there was also the men's junior UCI race on this day. Thibaut Nace kind of put on a show there, took the win. This was, another good battle between Nick Harder and Andrew Strohmeyer, who went second and third. Matthew Lilleveld, our first Canadian in the race, and then just a slew of Americans after that. But that was a fun one at the front. Thibaut's kind of the real deal.
Yeah, he was sending it off the Tune Arts flyover, as it's now dubbed.
Tune Arts tabletop fly.
Tune Arts tabletop.
Yeah.
Although Vanderpool hit that in 17, so
yeah. Well, yes.
No, that flyover was new
it didn't
in
exist.
17.
It did not exist.
That did not exist. That was new for last year.
Yeah.
Oh, that
one is like that's the ride bikes, have fun, feel good flyover or something like that because of the way that they've decorated it.
When was it that because they put the tarmac down last year, so that was the first year of the extended tarmac start.
Yep.
And then, because the year before, was it the year before that the start was like in the middle of the parking lot? Or was it on grass?
It might have been 16. That was before that.
That was 16.
My first year was 17.
Yeah, 16 it was like in the middle of the parking lot. It was just this really convoluted setup. Remember, it was kind of diagonally through the parking lot was the start?
Yeah, it ended up in a similar place to where it is now, like in terms of where it hit the grass or whatever.
Yeah.
But my favorite story about that is they had a gate that they were supposed to close. So basically there was kind of like a prologue kind of thing,
right,
where you skip Trek Factory Hill. They forgot to close the gate, and so a Masters 35 plus race went off, and it went straight down Trek Factory Hill after after the whole shot. And that was the year we were just flipping our shit because I was in the announcer's booth, and they were broadcasting the entire day's races for whatever reason. We're like, oh my god, and all the racers were just like, yeah, that was weird. So that's one of those things. But yeah, no. It was the barn flyover. I mean, that was part of the story that actually probably helped people out in the World Cup. Was the famed barn flyover was nowhere near as steep as it was before. And with that mud, it might have been hard for even World Cup riders to get up that thing.
Oh, I think for junior racers, they would have had to just circumvent it completely. Which didn't they do for some last year?
Yeah, because it was in the morning races. Some riders were falling down in the morning dew, and were having trouble getting up. So, but yeah, talking. So one thing about the course that I've always talked about. So this is the 7th year that they've had UCI level racing there. It's literally never been wet. Never, ever, 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 ever has it been wet at the venue for a race. And I always said, there are a lot of off-cambers, on that course. There's a lot of off-camber, but when they're dry, they're relatively rideable. And we were always like, well, if we get rain, this course is going to look like nothing that you've seen before. And we got a preview last year at our state championships. It was 35 sleeting in rain and just covered in mud. It was miserable.
That is miserable.
Yeah, I was supposed to announce the race, and I get there, and they're like, "Our PA's not working. Should we hook up the backup PA?" And I was like, "I don't need the money. I'm just going home." I just turned around, and I left. But yeah, I mean, people, there was just all these spots you had to carry your bike. It was really hard to ride. It was just like epic, December cyclocross. And I guess people were like texting mechanics, because I talked to like one of the mechanics. He's like, "Oh yeah, we heard about that. Someone was telling us about that race." And so I think that's kind of a prelude to what happened in the World Cup, because it played out how I think most of us from Wisconsin felt it would if that venue ever got muddy conditions.
Yeah, and one of the things that we can look at from this, and again, it's a bigger discussion. I want to get to this World Cup because we're already at an hour now, so we don't want to spend more than another half hour on this. But it's the kind of thing where this when we got to World Cup Sunday and it had rained 2-3 inches and it was a complete mess, and that venue, I don't want to use the word destroyed, but that venue, all of the grass was removed and it was complete mud, but no one stressed it. It's private property. Trek owns it. The main thing, the reason that whole area exists right now is to be a cyclocross track, and it was such a different vibe. I mean, especially like in the media room where we're at and everything, and we didn't have this. We're not all talking the same way we were talking about Louisville. We're not all talking the same way we were talking in Austin. None of these things. Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? Are we going to be able to have this race? People are going to be pissed off. It was just such a nice feeling that's not even an issue. No one even cared. It was like, hey, this is it. This is what they want. They actually wanted this kind of race. It looked great on TV, and here we were.
Yeah, I mean, they're the designated rain venue for Wisconsin Cross. I mean, they've been begging people, like, when their events get canceled, to come there. So they wanted that, like you said. Yeah, and it was a different vibe. I mean, my favorite, what was the favorite? Someone tweeted about John Burke not worrying about people wrecking his lawn or something like that. That was a pretty funny tweet.
Yeah.
We also had like photographers running to the Walmart in Sun Prairie to get rain pants, myself included, because 2 years it's been dry as hell. So, I didn't think it was going to be a complete slop fest.
Rookie move.
Yeah, no, I agree. Totally rookie move. Always bring all the stuff all the time.
But, I think that is the thing, though, is that, I think a lot of times, at least locally, teams here try to save money by renting parks that are cheap or trying to get free parks, whereas sometimes maybe you could spend a little bit more for a private venue that you could form a relationship with, and, agree that you'll reseed and stuff, and perhaps have that more sustainable way of putting on races and not running into some of these issues that we've had. And, obviously we can't all have a Trek, but like you said, Bill, it kind of highlights one of the benefits of having a good relationship with the landowner and perhaps having private property to put your cross race on.
It's one of these things that we can look at, races in Belgium. And again, there's only so much comparison you want to do because we'd like to think that we have like sort of a different take on the sport, but that's one of the things that they don't have to deal with. Nobody's like getting mad at them for ruining venues. So this sort of had that same vibe to it. And Bodie, I will say that my rookie move was that my rain pants were still in the press room while I was no longer there, and thankfully Bruce was still at work late at night and was able to grab them for me.
Oh, excellent!
Or they would have been in Wisconsin next year.
Well, so did this? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, I think what would behoove cyclocrossers and people is to sort of some before and after photos of that venue, like what it looks like now, and then what it looks like, a month later even.
I think we're on it.
Okay, cool.
So I already, one of my jobs, my only job now for Trek really over the weekend is to take aerial shots so they can just see how many people attended and how many cars are there. That's, they really take that stuff seriously and want to get like an accurate count of attendance. And I was like, well, I'm up here. Let me just take some shots of the track as well. So I have some really nice muddy and just kind of burned in, pretzel-y looking cyclocross track from above, and I think it'd be, I think they did the same thing afterwards on Monday, and then they'll be up there again getting those drone shots to see. I think the plan was each month to get a shot in there just to see how it recovers.
That's great. I look forward to seeing those photos.
Yeah.
So to heading into Sunday, we knew there was rain coming, and overnight it was very clear that it was going to be. Did that change your guys' expectations? How did that change, what you were looking for out of the race, who some of the favorites were, and, what you were expecting from the actual racing?
And this is like such a, I think on the women's side, how it turned out, I thought that, I don't think it's a spoiler. I really think that Katarina was extremely happy with that. And I think that it definitely played to her advantage on the men's side. I mean, shit, you're like, oh, the Belgians are still going to win. I mean, what does it matter?
Yeah. Yeah. I actually was kind of surprised at how well Neff did in the conditions. I had maybe assumed wrong, and we kind of spoke about it at the start line of the photographers that mountain bikers can't handle the mud because they don't race in the mud. But I know that, I don't know, I just maybe I didn't think she was going to do as well, and I thought that Magali would do a lot better. I kind of went with the sort of like power to weight, like it's easier to move through that bog. But it didn't crack out that way.
Yeah, they have some classic. They've had some classic mud races in the World Cup on the last couple seasons. I mean, the one thing is like the bikes just handle completely different. I mean, that's the thing that's amazing, especially in the mud. I mean, they're just it's just two entirely different beasts.
Well, Michael, you must have been partying pretty hard on New Year's Eve, because Yolanda won GP Sven Ness in like just a muddy slop fest. So, I looked at that and it was like, she was phenomenal in that race. So, that you can look at that. And she talked about how, she rides outside after race. She's like, oh, I ride outside all the time, and it's pretty bad in Switzerland a lot. So, she was super looking forward to it. So, let's jump into the women's race. I think the most notable thing in this, and I think I'm not sure. I don't think I was with either of y'all when we kind of first figured out what was happening, Zach. But sitting there and they pass by, and we hear Scott and Julie Herman on the PA. About 10 minutes, 12 minutes into the race, and they're going, 2 laps to go, and we're like, what? I mean, that was, I think, the biggest shocker of the race, at least for me. It was like, especially for all of us when we're covering this, it was like, holy cow! It just you figure you're going to get 4 or 5 sort of cracks at it when they're coming through, and now knowing that you already wasted one and there are only 2 more. Well, you only really have 1 more, and then you got to get to the finish line. It was kind of crazy how long these laps were. It sort of reminded me of stuff that we see at nationals. Well, so funny story. They made the course longer. So like last year, they felt like the laps were too fast, and so especially in that field down by the second flyover, I guess it would be. They added just some, what I felt racing it was just some completely pointless turns that really just slowed things down. And the only point of those was to add time. But it was, I was sitting there and I was standing next to Molly Herford, and I was doing the math, and I was like, well, this is a 13.5-minute first lap. Assume 14 minutes for the next one. Like, this is going to be a 3-lap race, and maybe it would have been different had like the lap time, right? Because if it had been, but even if it had been 13 minutes, then we could have been looking at like another 39-minute race or whatever, right? Because they have to shoot for between 40 and 50. And if it's 13 minutes a lap, that means you can't do 4. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could, but as we've seen, they kind of try to adhere to that rule. So, it seems like it was in a tight spot based on how those lap times were going after that very lengthy first lap.
Yeah, I did see they did adjust the course to give the riders some more grass. I watched that on the live stream and thought that, I mean, that maybe sped things up a little bit. But yeah, so they did. So Katarina Nash wins. Yolanda Neff in second. Evie Richards in third. Clara Honsinger in fourth, and Mag Lee, first Canadian, in fifth. But Katarina Nash finishes at 41.55. So yeah, I mean, add another lap and they're at 53.
Yeah, so we had somebody actually leave
54.
Leave a note wanting us to talk a little bit about that and just kind of the same normal feedback complaints about shorter women's races. And I mean, this wasn't Katie Compton winning a 27-minute Iowa race. This was within the time. They fell within the rules. Do they? Yes. Do they usually fall within the first part of that time? They do. And I think eventually, aren't we moving up to longer races? Isn't there a new rule coming in, or is that, or are we
couple
there
of years?
now?
I think it's like 2 years.
Okay.
It's like maybe World Cups and then all races. It's I totally missed that, Bill. We missed that rule drop because we were at Worlds and we were so busy doing World stuff in Denmark that we kind of missed an iteration of rules. But it's coming, yes.
Yeah. Well, next July we'll know for sure what the new rules are. But I think that I this is not to say that we don't. All of us aren't on board with wanting to see the races. I'd love to see them equal, but at least to have the women have a little longer race for sure. But I think there's only so much you can get on the officials on this one. I think they called it right, even though it ended up like that. You do another lap, and then you have, you're going to be pulling probably everybody after 15, because then it's just going to be, that's going to run into the next race. And I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's TV paying the bills, and you can't go but so far over, because that's the satellites and all that other kind of fun stuff. The one thing I will note that Katarina Nash, I think, is one of these people, as your UCI representative, that was more than happy about when the race ended. Pretty much said as much, because Yolanda Neff was just getting started. She was, I think, was she fifth place for a while and just started moving through riders, caught Evie Richards on the last lap to move into second. And by the time, Katarina went through the finish line, Yolanda was pretty much, making that turn for home. So it was not, she was closing fast.
Well, one thing that was interesting, though, is watching the race, I had assumed that Yolanda was just moving her way up the whole time. It actually happened all in the third lap. Because after lap 1, Yolanda's gap, she was down 40 seconds to Katarina. And after lap 2, it was 54 seconds. And we were like, I was looking at the numbers, and it was like, she closed like 39 or 40 seconds on Evie Richards in the last lap. Like, that was impressive. But I guess I had the sense, I think it all happened at the end. So it actually did take her a while to really get motoring. And, when she did, unfortunately, for like Clara and the other riders ahead of her, she was not going to be stopped.
No.
Yeah, I forgot that my opening bit for this was going to be that Nash is timeless and Neff wanted more time.
Okay.
I mean, that's what Neff said. She wished it was longer, and as you said, Bill, Nash was happy with the time. But I mean, I just want to let's talk about Katarina Nash in winning this World Cup. I feel like she's been retired, or kind of retired in finger quotes. You're gonna get kind of in and out of cross.
You're gonna get in trouble. You're in dangerous waters right now.
Okay, all right. Maybe okay. Well, let me say this. I don't feel Nash is not she doesn't do the full cross calendar.
She
right?
decided to no longer race European mountain bike World Cups, and people on that decision, referred to that as her retiring, and she is not in favor of that wording.
Okay, I apologize, Nash, because I have no disrespect, because she is awesome.
Yes.
But I just think it's great to see, especially with the storyline coming from World Cup number 1, where it's Mag Lee wins, and Nash and Mag Lee are teammates.
Former.
And then Nash is able to put it together, and like you said earlier, doesn't go out hot. Is has been around, knows how to race. Older folks. I'm getting older. It takes longer for us to warm up. It's really cool to see that, and I'm excited. Well, I guess actually it brings up a question: is how much more does Katarina Nash race? Does she go to Europe now and race the World Cups because she's in the leader's jersey? And Bill, I feel like you probably have some good insight there.
I know at least this is as far as we know. She's definitely going to Fayette Cross, so we'll see her in a couple of weeks in Arkansas after that. And I think this is really born out of having UCI meeting responsibilities. She will be going to Switzerland and racing in Bern. So I think that World Cup is on her calendar as for what I am to understand. Past that, I don't know. But I think.
But wait, why is she really going to Fayette Cross?
Why?
Because, well, I mean, I'm guessing because the Ozcross Epic Rides is the next weekend.
Yeah. Well, I don't know her schedule, but I'm not sure if she's doing that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I assume that would be part of the gig is go to Fayette Cross and then
I think that
go to Ozcross
or
the Oz Epic Ride.
I think with the decision, and again, she can tell me I will get confirmation on this, but I believe with the decision to do Bern, she's not going to do the closer for the Epic Rides, which is an interesting call because the winner of that race gets $10,000.
Well, and you're talking about her not being retired.
Yeah.
She's doing quite well when it comes to race winnings, cleaning up in those Epic Rides races. So, yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, Bodie, why don't you shout out our first Belgian here for the women?
Oh, my gosh. I'm looking at my notes.
I got it for you.
Oh, wow. Wait. Oh, my gosh. Where's the first? Ellen Van Looy.
Yeah, 15th place.
15th place. Not a fan of the slow ride.
That's right. Lucia Gonzalez Blanca, though. I don't know if they ever were able to track her down. For the
did they have two jerseys? That's awesome.
They did for the 16th place Minnesota Gophers jersey, hockey jersey.
I happened to walk up right when they were giving that to Lawrence, and you see in the video he seems like honored and stoked, not like why are they giving me a prize for 16th? That's terrible. Like but so that was cool.
Well, we were talking earlier about the internationalization of the sport. Look at the little flaggy little icons next to the top 8 in those results.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Like eight different countries, and as Bill mentioned, none of them Belgium, represented in the top 8 of the results in the World Cup. So that was pretty cool. I mean, I think that's right. We've been seeing that at a lot of the World Cups, but it really shines through here. In terms of the internationalization of the women's field. And it's awesome to see that, even if 2 of them are kind of like adopted Americans.
Yes, for sure.
Her nickname's Frenchie. She's French. Her nickname's Frenchie, right? Like,
yeah.
So that was something that was really, really neat to see.
And she's also the French national champion. So
right.
That
is true.
Fair.
Is true. All right, let's move on over to the men's side. Does that work?
Well, wait,
sure.
real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Please.
Evie Richards coming into these 2 races in shape, probably been even a little bit different story. I just she had some really great rides coming back from the injury. She said she's not in shape, but I'm just like, can you imagine where she would be if she had been strong enough? I think that'd be pretty interesting.
I half jokingly talk about cyclocross, and especially on the women's side, I'm like, are you really a legit sport if the mountain bikers can come and just crush, on a part-time basis? And I kind of throw Katarina in there as well, that she, as you said, Zach, she makes her living riding her mountain bike, for the most part, but also gravel and everything, but like longer distance kind of stuff. And, look at the top 3 in that World Cup. All really known, at least originally, for their exploits in mountain biking.
So we can say that Clara then is the top cyclocross. Because 4, 5, 6, you kind of had
the Sane Kant Award for first cyclocrosser.
Yes. I mean, at least 4, 5, 6 in this one, which is a little bit different. I think, right? We had some pretty cyclocross focused riders.
Yeah, I
in the
mean
top
now,
three
but look at
at-
Maglie Rochette. I mean, she was signed to a mountain bike team before finally deciding that cyclocross
Yeah, that's
was going to
true.
be the discipline
Yeah.
that she concentrated on. Jen Jackson in 7th place is really, I mean, this is if anyone out there, I mean, probably closer to Evie, it is a lark for her. She is out here just to do it, and then her main sport and her main focus is mountain bike.
Yep. Yeah, that's very that is true. But I mean, I consider Megali a cyclocrosser now, I guess, because
Yes.
she's
Oh, for sure.
firmly
Absolutely.
committed to the sport. Like,
And just to go back to what you were saying before, Michael, Katie Keogh down there, 13th place for this race.
Yeah.
So still, I mean, and we've seen it in the past. I think, gosh, that Jingle Cross race, Iowa City World Cup last year, just seems like this outlier in her normal, early season exploits. Kind of seems like she's one who sort of eases into the season and looks forward to that European.
well, she finished second in 17, second at Jingle, second
Okay.
at Trek.
So I guess she was up
in
for
the
those. Yeah.
16, she finished third at Jingle because I remember that was like one of the first interviews I did, and she was just ecstatic, because she grew up doing
I guess
that. So
I guess I'm just going back to last year where she seemed to have
Fair.
that
Yeah.
slow start in Charm City, slow start in Rochester, and then kind of just crushed in Iowa City. So maybe just looking at it from being more consistent later in the season. But I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fair.
I mean,
Sorry to
those
jump
are
on the
good
narrative,
points.
man. Sorry
No,
to
no,
jump on the narrative.
I am more than happy to have my narrative jumped on.
Okay.
I had one more thing, and I may be thinking of Clara Honsinger placing 4th in the World Cup, and her finish in does that get her more support to go to race the rest of Europe? She's on the national team, so Bill, you kind of know a lot of the ins and outs and all that stuff.
I think if she is on the national team, then yes, she will get more support. Will she get full support? I still think that she's, having a scrap to find her way there. But yeah, definitely by being on that national team now is a huge boost in the amount of support that she gets internationally. All right, men's elite race. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 out of the first 16 racers were Belgian, which means that Dieter Swick, Vinny Bastains, and Landra Lux are the guys that just kind of messed up, and they're going to be looked at sideways because they had non-Belgians or Dutch beat them. Then the other 3 in there in the top 16 were all Dutch. So that's all I got.
Yeah. Go ahead, Zach.
Oh no, go ahead, man.
I just was going to say that I think I saw this actually on your Instagram, Bill, so I'm taking it from you, but just essentially a wire-to-wire win for Eli, although, I mean, he got the whole shot. I think at some point Toon had taken the lead for a bit, but then Eli, I don't know where he passed him, but he looked great. He looked, as he said in that press conference, he trained for this, and he was coming in strong. I mean, he's pretty phenomenal right now.
Well, I think you're short selling a little bit what happened in the second lap. He just totally biffed it at the top of Trek Factory Hill. The two of them were off the front. There were no interlopers, no Paulshausen Bingle interlopers that Ertz had to contend with, and so he got his bike stuck in the course stake, hopped back on, and then just slipped out on the second of the downhill kind of switchback chicanes, whatever we want to call them. I mean, Ertz had a 16-second lead, and I think we saw last year there was this sense maybe Jingle Cross was an aberration, because Ertz did not look like the Ertz of old. Maybe the home field, I guess. Those guys always want to do well at Trek. But yeah, it happened in a hurry. I mean, his advantage was still 13 seconds after the next lap. And then by the time they crested that barn flyover, Iserbyt had passed him. And then he just he went for the jugular, as they say in sports parlance. And I guess it was kind of an interesting race tactic thing that he said. He's like, look, I learned that hey, if you're far behind and you're good enough to catch up to the guy in first, you're probably good enough to drop him. And so he attacked. and he
Nice.
beat him. So I don't know. It's interesting. Ellie is young, but it seems like there's some thoughtfulness in terms of how he raced, and I thought that was kind of interesting from him. So not necessarily wire to wire.
Okay.
There was
Sure.
that moment, but it was like when he caught him, he buried Tonarts, and it was just like, and Tonarts got stuck in the snow fencing at the bottom of one of those descents, and the lead was like 25 seconds, and it was just like, all right, where's the after party? Because this race is over.
The one, in third place we had Michael Van Toren out, and he's a guy who I always point out when it's muddy and you got to be off your bike. That is like the best days of his life for racing. He may be one thing I look at him and it's like 26 years old, and that just sort of blows my mind because in my head he's still like 18 and just this kid. And that's where I first saw it. Like when he was probably U23, late season when they were like racing with the elites, and it's him. Just kind of this blur off his bike, past Sven, past Niels, and just motoring by them. So I think that these conditions are really sort of meet his skills. So I was not surprised to see him in third place. And yeah,
tough luck man of the trip. Bad beats for our boy Vermeersch.
Yeah.
Vermeersching is having your podium hopes dashed in 2 straight World Cups now.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Speaking of things I think that we would be remiss not to talk about was Bridget Tooley's Flintstoning.
Yeah.
Do you have the whole, I don't know exactly where it happened, but Zach, do you have like the details on that?
I know she ran with no shoe for 2 laps almost.
The 2 laps part is just amazing, and like no sock either. Like that's she was like funny after the race. She was like, "Yeah, the part I'm really bummed about is I really love those socks." So we don't know what. This mud. I mean, I noticed it as well. I mean, you're running around there. I don't know if you guys did too. Like I thought I was going to lose a shoe there a couple times just running around the venue. It would just suck in people's shoes, and I think Brandon Fix had the same issue. He needed a new shoe. Bridget Tooley, just a sight, just riding around with one bare foot in the race for a couple laps and having a decent race as well.
And they made I was going to say with the women's field, they made most of them do the full 3 laps. So the last rider finished over an hour.
Yeah.
So they were still out there. I was surprised they weren't pulling people. So Bridget she got her money's worth, and that's, I think part of kind of the development program that USA Cycling is doing is reserving some of those spots for the younger riders.
Yeah, they split the juniors between Jingle and Trek. So we had a different crop of junior racers who were racing their first World Cup in Trek, and then different from those that got the opportunity in Jingle.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bridget Tooley was the last person on the lead lap, and she finished 22 minutes down.
That's amazing.
To give her over an hour. That was a pretty incredible sight.
Yeah, well, I mean, with her skills and some of the videos that she's been putting out with her air show and nose wheelies and stuff, it seems like a good story to turn into build a little bit of a legend at a young age. The shoeless Bridget Tooley, and that just shows right, it's pretty baller.
Yeah, I think interesting story. If we get just through another generic Belgian. Riders and here Cornevec Hessel, coming back from his little mishap in the C2, good ride for him in fifth, first Dutch. Joris Newhouse, I think, was extremely frustrated at Jingle Cross, came back and had a decent race in 8th place, and then Lars van der Haar, after a good showing in Iowa, slipping down to 13th. So it'll be interesting to see where old man van der Haar ends up this year. All these kids now. And then Steve Chanel. 14th place. Good race for him as well. And then I guess we can talk about Kerry Werner, 17th. Curtis White in 18th. Stephen Hyde came in 20th. Gage Hecht had some bite.
Bad day.
Yeah, he had a rough. I saw him. He did have some mechanicals. On one of those off campers, I saw him bending over his bike for a while. And
yeah, I was right there too. Yeah, and he like couldn't get the chain back on.
yeah.
So I know he was like, you got to be kidding me, as he's like sitting there trying to, right, because the narrow wide chain and the mud, and yeah, you felt bad for him after that great C1 at Jingle.
So one thing that was, this is a little bit of reporting by our friend Bruce Buckley that he did is, we talk about the Americans, and we saw where Kerry, don't call me Kenny Werner, was with Curtis White for a good part of the race. And it's like, oh, they're just battling for 17th. But, Bruce was saying he talked to Kerry. In his mind, he really wanted to beat Curtis White. They've got kind of this rivalry going. So it is interesting that it's still, the placing per se doesn't mean to them, but, they're building these friendly rivalries between each other, that are playing out in these World Cups. And I think both of them probably dug a little bit deeper. So although the result doesn't show, like they were still, Kerry just like collapsed at the finish.
Well, isn't that kind of like what we always sell cyclocross on? And it's happening at the World Cup level, that it doesn't matter where you are on there. You're always battling against the people around you. And, it's like, again, this is what, and especially at this level, you don't see this on the road. You won't see guys doing that. They'd be rolling in at that point because it really didn't matter. But in cyclocross, whatever it is, it just sort of brings that out that I think it's because you're at such slower speeds that you really are making so many moves against the same people, and you can take, advantages back and forth throughout the track. So it really just means more. And as you said, these two guys have been kind of going head to head since the first weekend of the season in Roanoke.
Bill. No, it's about the heat check.
Okay, you sold me.
Well, if we're looking at where they really blew it, is like they were actually really close. Kerry Werner was super close to Lawrence Sweck. He finished 3 seconds behind him, and so he missed out on. Although, as a Wisconsin Badger fan, I would argue that he made the correct decision, not having to take home a Minnesota Gopher hockey jersey. But there was something on the line for 16th. But yeah, so maybe being the top American doesn't matter to them, but like they're standing vis-a-vis each other, and kind of what's transpired. Like they split the first weekend. Curtis had that big win in Rochester. Curtis was a little bit better result at the Jingle Cross World Cup, so that does matter, and that's cool that they're not just folding it in, that they're battling to the finish.
And you're right, it will matter. It will matter in the algorithm for sure.
With that as a segue, do we have to get to the World Cup Omnium? Should we introduce the World Cup? Are we ready to unveil the World Cup Omnium, Michael?
I think so. I think that's what we should close with.
Yeah, so I preface this by saying I only did the women's race.
That's fine.
Sorry, guys. And yeah, I just decided to sort of, I don't have a name yet. I said the North American UCI World Cup Omnium, inspired by Jen Jackson riding all three races at Jingle. I was kind of curious to see, what that actually did for her overall. And I just kind of totaled up points just strictly based on UCI points. So in the C2, if you finished 11th, you got 0 points. Doesn't matter. So if we look after the World Cup Waterloo, and it's interesting because I feel like this might play into some heat check stuff, is that the winner of the Omnium was Katarina Nash. Because obviously the World Cups are weighted so heavily. Jen Jackson came in 7th in the Omnium. So her racing 3 days, she could have saved a little bit and done a little better in the World Cup and had a higher ranking. But I don't know. I like looking at points. I like seeing when people move up and down. That's why I love the heat check. When I'm watching Tour de France, I always like to go and see who moved up the most in the day and who dropped the worst. And that's why I love the heat check. But yeah, that's the Omnium. I don't know if I...
Well, what's the rest of the wide-angle podium?
Yeah.
Wide-angle podium of the UCI World Cup Micheal Boedigheimer heat check power rankings Omnium.
Should I have gone backwards like you, Bill? Should I have done it that way?
Well, you definitely you spoiled the ending here. It was a big
it's okay.
spoiler alert. But I want to know who the top 5 are. Who are our top 5?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to start from the bottom at 7 with Jen Jackson.
Okay.
Yolanda Neff in 6th.
Wow.
Caroline Monty in 5th. She's riding strong. Evie Richards, 4th place. Clara Hansinger in 3rd. And Magali Rochette in 2nd.
Huh.
And Nash in 1st. Nice. Is that...
Yeah,
maybe
no,
some
I
foreshadowing?
think playing off of that, there was one thing that I did want to talk about, and I think is really, at least for me, important to get your guys' views on before we go. A lot of the, much like my false Katie Keough narrative, much of the narrative for these 2 weeks has been who's not here, right? It's like, oh, well, these races aren't really that great because who's not here. So... And again, I think this plays out mainly on the women's side. So I was like, all right, well, let's look at the UCI, overall rankings and see who's not here. And the obvious one is Sana Khan, right? I mean, it'd be great if she was here. But after that, you got Denise Betsema. I don't think we're seeing her anywhere. She's number 2 right now in the world. Number 3, Mariana Voss. Got her last year, but obviously she's going to be at Road World. So I honestly... Here's what I don't know. This is maybe just my bias in this. I don't expect to see them. They don't show up in Belgium either. Like Anna-Marie Wurst, same thing. Like we're not going to see her until later in the season. Lucinda Brand, same thing, right? Aren't these all sort of later season, pickups? And then 6th place is Katie Keough, who's there. Lois Sells was there. Magali Rochette was there. So I don't know who we were really missing on the women's side. I don't understand where that argument came. And then and do you disagree with that? I mean, you think there were people?
I mean, I would say Sana Kant not coming is obviously big news. I've always been curious about Anne-Marie Wurst because like she does a low key kind of mountain bike schedule. Like she'll do some of the World Cup, she'll do her nationals, but I haven't seen where she's like all in on the World Cups necessarily.
No, doesn't she do road or no?
Maybe.
I don't.
She doesn't. So maybe she's the one.
I mean, I would like to see her in the U.S. Like she's always like she's just such a sendy like rider. Like I would love to see her race one of these times.
The one I wish would have come over. Herman Mason. That could have been another 3rd for the Buddy Cup. Was sailing del Carmen Alvarado. It would have been fun to see her over here.
Yeah. Well, and
that would have been great.
And I mean, she's done. I was looking at. I mean, she's done China before. Like she's done like some traveling to do races. So, but yeah, kind of would have been cool to see her. I mean, she's obviously one of the young stars. But I mean, don't you think a lot of that narrative is driven by Vanderpool not being here? I mean, if we're being honest.
Sure. And so then we look at the other side. And yes, a huge hole at 1 and 3. Wout van Aert isn't going anywhere. He's still, rehabbing for many more months. Vanderpool's missing. Toon Aerts was here. Michael Van Torenhout was here. Lawrence Sweeck was here. Lars van der Haar was here. Quentin Hermans was here. Gianni Vermeers was here. Cornevette Kessel was here. Ellie Iserbyt was here. All of the men were here. Yes. You're just missing Vanderpool. That's really it.
Well, but like, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like,
he's
the son,
right? But can an argument be made that we got better races?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think so.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's that's the part, and maybe this will change. We're already talking about, as you said, Zach, another team now deciding they're not coming back that we hear every year. So we'll see what happens. But I heard that, and I wasn't really sure that narrative was as strong as maybe it was made out to be. That we weren't getting like full fields. I think what people were competing against was a pretty close to what they're going to get in Europe.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I find it encouraging just to hear that Jingle Cross wants to continue as a World Cup and is going to try and do that. And I'm glad to hear that.
Although conversely, I will say, I mean, the fact that it was like 7 of the top 20 from women's worlds last year were here. I mean, that number still suggests that there's going to be quite a bit of shakeup, and you didn't even have Ferran Prevot racing. Evie Richards is an elite. So I think, like, I don't know. I mean, at least in terms of like what this means going forward, I think there's a lot of questions about, as these riders start to pop in, especially on the women's side, and we're just going to see a big mix, blender of results and what's kind of happening.
I guess my
sure,
counter. Yeah, no,
yeah.
go ahead. I was just
I
saying
thought it was great.
my
It was
counter
great racing.
what's that?
It was great. It was
Yeah.
great. It was an awesome 2 weeks. Or
Yeah.
it was. Was it just 2 weeks? It was just 2 weeks. It was an awesome 2 weeks. Great racing. 2 great events and awesome vibes surrounding it. So I didn't hear from anyone at the races saying like, "Oh, so and so's not here." It was just like everyone was really stoked about who was there and the chance to get to watch all these awesome people. So.
Yeah, no, and my only counter argument is that if you're using Worlds as a measuring stick, that the argument, even from again Sonic Khan and others like that, is that they just show up for World. All these roadies just show up to Worlds and don't race the real cyclocross races anyway. So that's not even an American problem. That's like a cyclocross problem, that they see in Europe as well. But yeah, no, I agree. I think they were great races and a fun 2 weeks. I think that we are going to be talking about, Michael, what you're talking about with it's good to hear that Jingle Cross wants to be a World Cup. I think with this whole change to this Flanders group is really for us who want American World Cups is kind of scary because I don't think that they are running the World Cup for the UCI now, which is just, the World Cup in itself was already a conflict of interest, and now putting this outside Belgian group in charge of the World Cups is huge. From what I understand, they want half of the races in Belgium. Like you're going to get, if they want 16 World Cups, 8 of them are going to be in Belgium. And then the rest of the world gets to pick up the scrap. So this whole globalization is just complete crap. And they want them in huge places. They want to go and play in big cities and stuff. They don't want to go to Waterloo, unfortunately. They don't want to go to Iowa City. So I think it's going to be really, really kind of just unknown territory here. And I hope it happens again. But I think we got or the organizers have some definite obstacles to overcome. I think having this muddy Trek race helped a lot because it looked like cyclocross.
Well, and the complaint about Jingle Cross is it's too hard for September.
Too hard and too hot to
Yeah.
race that early in the year. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see. And and obviously there's the rumblings of what Fayetteville is going to do next year and the year their bridge year between worlds after they do the C2 that's coming up in 2 weeks. So
I think that was another, and I don't know. I can't. This is all, I'm just getting all this like second, third hand, but I think that was another thing that group was talking about, that they were limiting, other than Belgium, no more than 2 World Cups per country.
Of course.
And how do you, how do you make these rules?
So was this announced? Like,
no, none of it. This is all like unconfirmed rumor mongering. But if just sort of some stuff to chew on, and if we find out if it actually is true or not, I guess will be the
that part's out there though. Like they want to do a minimum of 12, but they really want 16.
Up to 16. That part
and
I know.
And there's a quote unquote cap on the number that Belgium can host, but it's like 8 and 10 under those rules. So it'd be like 8 of the 12 or something.
Yep.
And then like 10 of the 16. So, or, the numbers are out there that when they announced the new title sponsor. So that part isn't. But the question is, how is, Flanders, what are they going to do? Are they going to be like, oh, we really want to go to China or something? And
I've already heard the grumbling, when Sven put that thing out there that we have to make cyclocross global, everybody's like, cool, let's start in Europe.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
On that happy note.
Yeah. We've been talking for a while.
Yes.
We should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, for sure. Let's wrap this out. But this was a great conversation. And let's do this again, especially, I don't know, I'd say especially after Fayette Cross, if not before.
Yeah. Do we have a name? Are we going to have a name, or is this just like...
I think it's going to just have to happen, organically.
Okay. Yeah, we've talked about... We definitely have an episode coming about, participation and what that means in the future of cross, although it looks like for undisclosed reasons, we might have a little bit of a hiccup on getting some of our data on that. We'll try to expedite that. So that's one. And we talked about doing a team kit edition.
Oh, yeah.
So, Bill probably mentioned the feedback line, but if you have topics that you'd like to see us cover, we would love to dive into them.
For sure.
So Bill, how can they reach us?
Well, Zach, they can read. I get this. I'm not used to starting with this part. You're supposed to start. I'm supposed to ask you.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
No, they can reach us by going to you can call 405-CX-HAIRS, HAIRS, and you can leave a voicemail there. I won't answer the phone. It doesn't even ring. It just goes straight to voicemail. And then I explain to you that anything you say can be used on the show. It's sort of like reading you your rights. And we'd love to hear from you. So leave us a message there. You can also shoot us email at feedback@cxhairs.com or just yell at me on Twitter at cxhairs. Michael, where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at YeahYouRide. I'm also on Twitter, but I'm at Land Softly, or just Google search my name. You can also go to YeahYouRide.com for photos and podcast stuff too.
And Zach, tell us all about what you got going on in the world of cyclocross.
Well, I'm on the Twitters at the Schuster, and I guess I run a website. It's called Cyclocross Magazine. It's at cxmagazine.com. I don't know when this is going to post, but I'm in like a 3-week. I feel like I've been run over by several trains, so I don't know. I don't know how much.
This
content
is going up quick. This is going up tomorrow.
Yeah, so I don't know. I can't make any big promises for like an overload of post World Cup content, but we'll get rolling again soon. But yeah, you can always find everything that we do at cxmagazine.com. That's what. Isn't that our website?
Too, but at Cyclocross too.
Oh yeah, we're on Twitter at Cyclocross.
There you go.
Yeah, but I never really check those mentions. So tweet me at the Schuster, and I'll get back to you.
Fantastic. All right, guys, it's been awesome. We'll catch up with y'all soon.
All right. Have a good.
Right.
Thanks much.